Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS New and Approved. I'm really excited to have Nikki Sixx here with me, and
How you
he's got a
doing?
great new book called The First 21. Nikki, it's great to see you, man. I know you're out in
Good to see-
Wyoming, and I'm back
Yeah,
out here in your old hometown, and
yeah.
but it's really exciting to see you, and I'm really, it's really funny. I was thinking recently about when I've seen your list of favorite albums. I know we're like a couple years apart in age, but not much. I'm just maybe a couple years younger. But the thing is, we love the same records. I was like looking at your
Yeah.
list. It's like the same Bowie record, same T-Rex record, same Aerosmith record. Like Zeppelin. It's really amazing that when you pick your favorite albums, how you and I are so similar. And
I mean,
I've always wanted to say that to you since the last time we actually hung out. I mean, I know I was at some of the farewell shows, but do you remember when it was you and I doing that thing for Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell 3? It was like you,
yeah.
me, Todd Rundgren, Meatloaf, Jim Steinman, a bunch of people like that. We were at the old Limelight in New York City
Yes, I do remember that.
doing
That was awesome.
it was cool.
Those are good times. Those are good times. It's just been fantastic writing this book and coming up with, another song, kind of like we did with the Heroin Diaries book, and then we did 6 a.m. and then we did Life is Beautiful to kind of focus on the sobriety side of it, or the positive side of it. And it was still rock and roll. I remember our first gig we ever got, and we weren't a band. 6 a.m. was not a band. Was to open for Korn, I think in Salt Lake City. I think the song had like been added there and took off. And I remember looking at James and DJ, and we're like, well, we're not really a band. It's like a project. And we thought we were going to die. And we went on stage. We used Tony, the drummer from Papa Roach, and we were playing this song, Dead Man's Ballet, which is kind of Pink Floyd-ish. And all the fans, back then, they're lighters. And I remember getting off stage, and like guys in Korn gave us a high five. And so something that we never thought about being a band other than a project band became like a real reality at that point. And, we went out and we've toured around the world, and, we got a hits album coming out. It's just been an amazing process because Mötley Crüe is the mothership. It's always going to be the mothership. Mötley Crüe always comes first, no matter what. And when there's slices of time in my life, that I can do other creative things, it's nice to have the ability, to write books and make music and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
It is. You've been such an inspiration to me, coming up on 17 months sober now that I am. And your story, and you've always been a real pillar for that. You and I've had these conversations before in my earlier years when I was struggling, and kind of coming back and forth. But I mean, it's taken hold for me, and I feel so much better in the clarity. So your story is so inspiring, and that's why this book is so exciting to me. I love the backstory of your life. It's just incredible.
Thank you.
As
Thank
Frank
you.
Farhar Jr., it's, you as a kid, we got to talk about that. It's amazing. Your father, leaving you guys early, your mom being, a bit of a wild child, obviously.
Yeah.
And just all the people that came in and out of your life, like from a very young age, being around people like Richard Pryor or,
Yeah.
the Minnesota Vikings guys, things like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about what that was like as a child. And also, I want to hear about that when you found that love for rock and roll. What
Yeah.
what was those first couple records that you went, oh my God, this is what I want to do. This is who I am.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. When you're a kid, you don't know that you're moving from city to city between my mom and my grandparents. And, now I know we were following the check. My grandfather would work at a gas station, and when that job ran out, he would go somewhere else, and he would work in a machine shop. And so as a kid, I didn't know that there was anything wrong with that, and they did do their best. And back then, my grandparents, they were born in the 20s, late 20s, and People didn't finish school back then. They just went straight to work. And I learned that you work hard and you never complain. And when I started applying that to my creativity as a kid, moving, what I started doing was I started working hard, whether I was doing chores, working on a farm, but also I applied it to what I was excited about, which were words. So I was writing, documenting. I was the weird kid with the notepad. You're like, stay away from that kid. he's a future serial killer kid, and as I got older and I was always fighting to be able to grow my hair out. It was like a real thing. And I started growing my hair out. I started also feeling a little bit more secure because I always have my hair in my eyes and my notepads, and I was kind of to myself. And what had happened was, from going city to city to city, every time I would make a friend, and I like having friends, and it would be very hard on me to have a best friend and then move. And so I started going inwardly instead of outwardly. And when I discovered football, it was a way to, I just love football. I've always loved football. A lot of people never understood that the stripes under my eyes was from football. It was, it became not a trademark, but something. I've seen other guys put it on their face and they're like, you can't do that. It's like if I wore Gene Simmons makeup, even though it's only 2 stripes, it came from football. So I like the idea of sports, and because I could be maybe a little bit violent. I love the idea of, I was a defensive end, and I love the idea of, football. And then I was writing and was growing my hair out. And you asked me those moments when I discovered music. The first thing I discovered was Alvin and the Chipmunks. And they would do these records, which would be cover songs. Now that we know the business, we understand there is no Alvin and the Chipmunks. There's like 5 hired singers, and there's an executive that goes, you guys are going to do a Doors song, and then they get the licensing, and then the Chipmunks sing it, and some kid like me hears it. And actually, it's the gateway drug to other music that I was hearing on the radio, and I was hearing stuff driving around with my mom, Petulia Clark, Downtown. Again, a story. Jimmy Dean, Big Bad John, a story. Like, I hadn't discovered Ian Hunter or Bruce Springsteen or Bob Dylan yet, but my imagination was, this is more interesting to me than just some lyrics that rhyme. Yeah. Because it was kind of like, so for me, a song like Dr. Feelgood is directly influenced by things like that. Right? Yeah. It's a story. Yeah. Yeah, which I love. I think that's great. So you were like so many of us listening to AM radio, and you were talking about the Alvin and the Chipmunks thing. Remember they had that Beatles album. They did all the Beatles covers on it, Yeah. I just remember them starting that album with, all right, Chipmunks, got your hair on straight? Yeah. And then they went into All My Lovin', because my neighbors had that record. So I was like, listen to that. But, it's funny what you're saying, Matt. You're saying my neighbors had that record. Like, my friends would have like a Jim Croce record or a Bread record. And then they put an album out, I think, called Guitar Man, because all their stuff was ballady. And we're like, because guitars became cool as a young teenager. But we discovered, like you said, you discovered that from your neighbors. You probably discovered vinyl. I mean, God, remember making cassettes and passing them around, here's a punk band and a metal band, and you would trade it for somebody else. That's how music got transferred and got into our head. I love that you mentioned Jim Croce, because you're talking about storytellers. That's got a guy who's great, who's pretty underrated. Yeah. Wow. I love him. You know what I mean? He was just made 3 albums basically and died in that plane crash, but wrote these incredible story songs that took you on a journey. And a lot more people appreciate him than he ever gets credit for. A lot of rockers really love him, Speaking of which,
you just did the LA Rats thing with Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
Rob loves Jim Croce. We have that conversation all the time. We talk about that, which is pretty cool.
I didn't know that. I'm just going to text him the words Jim Croce right now.
You should, because he will literally listen to some of those albums like Life and Times or You Don't Mess Around with Jim or I Got a Name when he's backstage before he goes on stage. And I always joke about people think Ozzy's listening always to metal, but he's listening to Beatles and Peter Gabriel before he goes on stage.
Right.
So everybody's got something else. And speaking of which, we'll get to that later because I want to move in in time. But I love the fact that you almost did Seals and Cross Diamond Girl, which is a great song.
Great song.
I love that tune. You know, they had some great singles, man. And
did Typo Negative do that song?
I think they did. Yes, yeah.
I think they did that, or another one, but somebody did a Seals and Cross song.
They did Summer Breeze. That's right. They did Summer Breeze, right? That was the one.
Summer Breeze, which was a fantastic version. You know, what's fun about going to rehearsal is that it's just four guys. There's hopefully no managers and agents and photographers and videographers. Just the same four guys that sat around and was trying to come up with a band name. And Mick Mars came up with Mötley Crüe, and we were drinking a Lowenbrau, and there was two umlauts over the O or something. And I scratched out Crüe and wrote, CRUE, like I knew what I was doing. And we're like, that sounds like a good band name. And when we go to band rehearsal, it's the same four guys, right? There's no Grammys, there's no whatevers, there's no crowds screaming. So when we sit around and we're like, we used to love to record a cover song. We did Helter Skelter on Shout at the Devil. And actually on Too Fast for Love era, we recorded Tonight by the Raspberries, which wasn't on that record, but
and what a great song that is.
Well,
I mean, right?
I was just going to say, when we're sitting around and I'm like, hey, what if we try Seals and Crofts? And like the band's like, I'm not sure. And then someone's like, what if we try this? And well, let's try that. And then it was Vince that said, what about Brownsville Station, Smoke Through the Boys Room? So it's that like creative process that's so exciting to me.
I mean, I would love to hear your version of Raspberries Tonight, because that's another one of those bands who had some great songs, man. Those songs were like
great
power
songs.
Pop that hit you over the head. Those songs are so good,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, you remember, I think it was Don Kirshner's rock concert, and they came on. You never knew who was going to play because we had no access. We just knew at midnight on channel whatever, I remember being in Seattle, that Don Kirshner's rock concert was on there, and I saw the Dolls on there. And I remember when the Raspberries came out, I really loved their songs, but they were syrupy and ballady sounding. And they came on and they had walls of Marshall Stacks. They had Flying V's and Explorers, and they had like their hair was long, and they were like, I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And they played those same songs with that intensity. And I was like, wow, that was a big moment for me. I was like, you can write super simple killer hooks, and you can turn up the volume and play it really aggressively, and you have like the best of both worlds, which is the music we grew up on, the same as we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the Vikings thing is cool too. I mean, just this is really, the interview's about you, but I wanted to tell you, you'd appreciate that my dad went to college with Fran Tarkington, and they were like great friends. Fran Tarkington took the first picture of me in the nursery in Georgia because he was a bulldog, and that's where I was born, in Athens. So I followed his career, Giants, Vikings, of course, but I knew you would appreciate that, being a Vikings fan, you know what I mean? So, but anyway, getting back to the book is just incredible. I love the fact that when you came to Los Angeles, you just had a bag of clothes. And when you said bag of clothes, was it like a grocery bag kind of bag of clothes, or did you like pack like a little duffel bag and your cassettes? What did you have with you? Because
I mean, I don't really remember having suitcases when we were kids, so I have no idea. But I didn't have much, but I did have my cassettes with some Mott the Hoople and T-Rex and maybe Stooges and first or second Aerosmith album. Things that were most important to me were those cassettes, you know, the music. It's all I had. It's really all I had, because by the time I got to those years, like all I could think about was, how can I write songs like these people? It was almost like, you know, I was in college and that was like my homework.
Yeah.
And listening to T-Rex, listening to those songs, listening to It's a Ripoff off of Electric Warrior, listening to Cheap Trick, and massive influence on me.
Yeah, In Color, right? In Color is just what a great album.
Anything that band's ever touched, in my opinion, is gold.
Yeah.
They're gold, and they're golden people, and they're the best people on earth. And that's another thing, you know, you learn when you're out doing what we do here, is you meet people that aren't that very cool sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's a drag, but you meet just as many that are, and you try to, in my case, I try to model myself after people that leave a good impression on me, not on people that leave a bad impression.
Yeah, you know, we both love that 70s glam stuff. I mean, I just, you know, I love Matt, Bowie, you know, T-Rex, even Slade, you know, all that Sweet, Desolation Boulevard, those things.
Yeah.
Just such great, those records are ingrained or are blueprinted for us, right?
Yeah.
How did you get turned on to that stuff? Was there like somebody in your life in particular where you made that jump? Because we all loved AM radio and we listened to pop and we were just some sponges, impressionable. Yeah. But when did you realize, like, hey man, I love Mark Bolan. I love Bowie.
Yeah.
I love Steven Tyler and Joe Perry. What were those? Tell me about those. It
was radio.
Yeah.
Right. First, radio was so important, and you have so many different kinds of music. And I remember it was the summer of maybe 74 or 73, and we'd first moved to Idaho, and we had this nice little double wide trailer, and my grandmother had a little tiny radio with the antenna and the aluminum foil on it. And I remember hearing Saturday in the Park from Chicago, and it was like a weekend, summer, and I'd started to kind of discover girls and obviously music. And I just remember that feeling of the same feeling like I feel a lot of people get when they read the first 21. It's that innocence. But then I get hit across the back of the head of the 2x4 by Black Sabbath, and that would snap me out of that. But I was lucky to have a time where music was you're getting seeded with lots of different kinds of music because of radio. And then the next journey was to go to the record store. And I mean, you remember this, Matt. I mean, I feels like I've spent half of my life like going through records and reading the vinyl, and like sometimes I remember even buying records because of the album cover. And I remember getting Roxy Music and with the two half-nude girls on the front.
Yeah, Country Life, right? You bought that record, right? Because it had Thrill of It All and Prairie Rose and all that. All I Want Is You. What a great album, you know? So
yeah.
But you saw that, you're
and Ohio Players, like Ohio Players always had these like beautiful girls. Remember they had the album Honey. They had a girl that was, you know, half naked and honey was dripping. I mean, as a teenager, I'm like, what is this? So I guess what I'm trying to kind of allude to is buying that Aerosmith album when it first came out, that first Aerosmith album, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. And Ohio Players and Roxy Music and Jim Croce and the experience of vinyl and then sharing the records. I remember when I got Edgar Winter, They Only Come Out at Night. Like, that's like, that album blew me in my friend's mind. First of all, the way the band looked, you know, in Idaho, people don't look like that. At least they didn't then.
The cover with Edgar, like in makeup, but then the guys on the back, you know, with Ronnie Montrose and, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And they had those big stacked boots.
Yeah.
And I was like, where do you get clothes like that? Because I have Kmart and JCPenney.
Yeah.
And you know, it's funny, a lot of people don't know this, but my grandmother loved fashion. So she was, always making her own clothes. So when I started seeing these bands, I was like, can you make me a tank top with stitching on it? I remember she made me a pair of bell bottoms, and, when I lived in Jerome, Idaho, so 4,000 people. The city I live in now is 9,000 people. So it's like I'm back to the roots in a lot of ways, but 4,000 people. She made me these bell bottoms, and I saw a picture in some magazine. I was like really like standing out, but I was falling in love with the music and kind of how these cool people looked. And remember watching Dick Clark, and they would have like the dancing, and there would be like guys with long shags, and then we would watch Soul Train, and you'd see all these people with style, and it was just, it was percolating. My uncle Don Zimmerman, who was the president of Capitol Records, that they did some little docu-series thing on me a while ago, and he said that when Frank came to Hollywood, Los Angeles, it was everything that like he needed. Like it was all there in Los Angeles. There was music and girls and the beach and the weather and all kinds of music.
You found
Blew
home.
my mind.
You found home where you like really wanted to be, because that's what you dreamed about all those years,
Yeah.
Were you a big fan of the Sheer Heart Attack album by Queen too? That was a great record, right? Did you love that record? I mean, yeah, that stuff was all. I mean, those early albums. They certainly rocked in a big way.
I saw that tour at the Paramount Theater. It was, I'm not sure of the order, but I think the headliner was Kansas.
Yeah.
And then it was either Queen or Rush. I think it was Queen and then Rush, because Killer Queen was out. And they opened with Now I'm Here. And Freddie was right in front of us in all black, those wings. And he said, Now I'm Here. And the lights went out and the riff was going. And then he said, Now I'm there. I'm just a new man. And he was in white. And then the flash pots went off. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the greatest band in the world, and no one knows it yet.
Yeah.
They had just getting started, but man, the Ogre Battle.
Yeah.
I talked to Brian May about this one time. I said, Ogre Battle about killed me when I was a kid. Trying to figure that out.
Trying to play it because it's backwards in the beginning, and then it goes and turns around, right? So it's like,
Still kind of crazy. And he said, yeah, but I didn't write that. Freddie did. And Freddie didn't play guitar, but he thought operatically. So he was like, and he was playing it like as hard as he could on this like acoustic guitar. And that's where it came from. And then, of course, Brian got a hold of it, and then all those amazing vocal parts and drum parts. I mean, what a band. And not enough people talk about John Deacon, by the way. Not enough people talk about that guy. That guy with his bass parts.
As a bass player, what an incredible bass player. I mean, that band, everything was in pocket. And you saw that Sheer Heart Attack tour. I saw a Night at the Opera as a young kid in a Beacon Theater, and it was like, so it was still the first 4 albums. So it was incredible. I mean, that show blew my mind as a kid,
Yeah, they had the best dry ice in rock and roll, if I could say.
They really did. Right? And Freddie was like just a force, I mean, they were all great, no question about it. But then, of course, Aerosmith was another favorite. So, but you loved all those bands. You actually saw T-Rex. I never got to see Mark Bolan. Talk to me about, you were at one of their shows. Tell me about that.
So during the writing of the book, the first thing we did was we did the first 21 years on the first week in a month. And then we did the first 21 years again, recorded. We did it for 4 weeks. So we had the manuscript, just, if there's any wrinkles or questions, we put tent posts in there and said, okay, here's when you were talking about T-Rex. Oh, here's your friend Rick Van Zandt that you went with. Let's reach out to Rick. And I'd stayed in contact with Rick, who ended up being guitar player for Metal Church, phenomenal guitar player. And we started talking about this stuff, and I was I was like saying, you know, I remember that he came up out of the fog, and then Rick was like, no, he was on this like circular, like circus looking thing that when it came up, Mark was on it, but it was a circle. And I think like now we think, well, maybe it was like a knife throwing thing, but it was like yellow and red. And wow, like when you're a kid, that's like, oh my God, there he is, the guy. There's Mark Bolan coming out of the fog on a like pinwheel knife throwing thing. And then you think of that in comparison to like a Rammstein show.
Yeah.
You know, but back then, I mean, Rammstein blows my mind. I love that band. But back then, that simple stuff captured our imagination. And then we would go down the T-Rex rabbit hole, Mott the Hoople, Bowie, Lou Reed. We'd go down that whole thing and end us with Sweet and Slade. And we'd be listening to Sweet, listening to Queen and going, hey, wait a minute. These guys are from the same city. Who influenced who with these harmonies? And I think you read the liner notes, you're like, hey, they recorded their album at the same place.
Yeah.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just all those, I love those years. I love them.
Yeah, those, and those records are just, they stay with you for life. They certainly do for me. I know you feel the same way, which is amazing. And again, that was the thing that was incredible. And you talked about, things like Don Kirshner Rock Concert. There was Midnight Special. There was In Concert on ABC with like Alice Cooper. You'd see Alice Cooper do a whole show, or you'd see Bowie do like his thing. I remember around the time of After Pinups or pre-Diamond Dogs, which was amazing. And it was I
best album ever.
Which one?
Best album, Diamond Dogs.
Diamond
Dogs, one of my favorite.
Me too. That's the thing that you and I have in common. I meant to tell you, Diamond Dogs is just this record. And you know what was crazy about it lyrically? Obviously, there's the whole George Orwell 1984 thing that he wanted to get the rights, and Orwell's widow wouldn't let him. But there's so much in the lyrics of that record that have to do with the pandemic and everything else. If you listen to it now, it blows my mind. It's like, whoa. It's so ahead of its time.
Future Legend that starts that record, I just kept listening to that over and over and over. I'd written The Devil, and we had demoed up a bunch of those songs like Bastard, Looks at Kill, and Shout at the Devil. And we had a song in there called Survive, and we were like doing like interesting. We were just like having fun in the studio, like taking a gong and like winding it up and then hitting it and letting it unwind, like as the sound was going woo, 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 and we'd record that and then try to put it into a song, and we would narrate over it. We were doing all this stuff in this song, I Will Survive. And I kept listening to Future Legend, and that's where In the Beginning came from. That's what In the Beginning is, just Future Legend. That's all it is.
That's incredible.
I mean, I'll never deny that. That was the whole intention, was to have almost like an intro tape to our album. And then we did use the tape for a while too. Yeah,
that's amazing. I love that you love it. Diamond Dogs is my favorite Bowie album too. It's got the beauty, and the darkness in things like Sweet Thing Reprise, We Are the Dead. I mean, those songs are incredible.
I mean, it was
And then Rebel, of course, it will always be just like, I mean, it's just it's classic.
That song stands out for sure. What a great artist.
Yeah, one of the best. So Nikki, talk to me about that when you do. I mean, obviously you were couch surfing. You went Seattle, and then you came down here. I mean, and you took a Greyhound bus. Can we talk about those early, when you got to LA? So Don Zimmerman was related to you, right? Like at Capitol Records, he was a relative of yours. And
Don was married to my mom's sister, Sharon.
Yeah.
So I had my Aunt Harleen and Uncle Bob that were around with my grandparents a lot. So, I got to spend a lot of time during the pandemic with my Aunt Harleen and my uncle, and they really helped with the book a lot because they would tell me things that were happening when I was too young to remember. Then Sharon, who married Don, who was the president of Capitol Records, and my mom. So when I was in Idaho, in Jerome, Idaho, I would get these care packages with I remember this the one Beatles album I got. I can't even remember it. The one where they're all like butcher outfits with blood and
yeah, Yesterday and
babies.
Today.
Remember that?
Yeah, Yesterday and Today. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting that, and I was like, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now we're talking. My grandmother was like, what are those boys covered in blood for? Fast forward to Shout at the Devil Blood session.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was getting these great records from him because he knew, talking to my grandmother, my grandfather, that young Frank was in love with music. So he would send me, Beatles, and I got so many records, and Wings, so God, Wings, to me, one of the greatest bands. Band on the Run, can't top that album.
Yeah, that's the best one. Besides
you put
Ram.
Band on the Run, Diamond Dogs, any Aerosmith album, Isolation Boulevard. You're like, oh wow, that's me. I relate to all that. All boiled into one creates something new. So
and you must have loved Stars as well. Remember Stars? Because Stars.
Oh,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Violation.
got a song called Live Wire.
Yeah.
They got a song called Live Wire.
Yeah. That first album and Violation, those are great records, right? I love that stuff.
Amazing. I worked at Capitol Records in a warehouse, unboxing and boxing records. And I remember when Violation came out, and I was like, is this going to fit my jacket? Even though my uncle was the president of the label. So Dawn was very impactful in my life. Dawn had, I started to do the stuff teenagers do. I was giving my parents a real run for their money, and I'd already been to Seattle, so I'd experienced big city stuff that kids can get into. And he said, if you want to come stay down in Los Angeles for a second, you can stay and I'll get you a job. So took a Greyhound bus down, stayed at their house in their guest room, and he got me a job at a record store, Music Plus in Glendale.
Yeah. And
let me borrow his F-150 Ford pickup, which had kind of wide tires in the back. So I was like, there I was, listening to the Eagles on the radio, listening to KLOS, I'm sure, and driving down the freeway, and like my hair's long, and I'm like playing guitar, and I'm working in record stores, and girls are like who's this new kid in town? And I'm starting to put bands together. And after a while, and I understand now because I am a father, and if my nephew came to stay here and had a Marshall stack in the guest room over there, and was playing Black Sabbath riffs badly, I'd be like, hey, we gotta figure out how to make this work, because we're trying to live a normal family life, and I got kids that are doing homework, and a wife is making dinner, and you're blasting music. So it came to this conclusion. And Don was like, let me help you get an apartment. The best thing that he did for him. And then I was just, on my own. I failed quickly. I went from job to job. But I was auditioning for bands, writing songs, studying. I'd put on a Cheap Trick record, listen to that song, and then try to learn it backwards. And then I would listen to the group on an Aerosmith album, and try to put it to the Cheap Trick thing. And then I'd listen to Alice Cooper, Billion Dollar Babies. And I'm like, why is Muscle of Love jump off the record the way that? And it was just obsession. My wife's like, oh my God, you're once I see it, I can't stop until I get to it.
Then I got to ask you this, because it's amazing. If you love Billion Dollar Babies, Denny Dunaway is one of the great bass players who's unsung. What an incredible player with Alice Cooper's original band, right?
Yeah.
Learning something like Generation Landslide, or some of those songs that were on that album that were just so incredible, right? I can only imagine what it was like with you as a young man working on those tracks, because it was it was killer. It was amazing,
And those, it's interesting, guys like Dennis, who's an amazing bass player, who influenced him, right? 60s.
Yeah.
By the time we got into the 70s, like, you know, we had the moving, walking, really interesting Dunaway style bass players in a lot of rock bands. Like Tom Hamilton's one of the greatest bass players of all time, if not the greatest.
He's so good.
Like just doing what's right for the band and for the song, and not like what's right for him. And we have to think like that as the, you know, the drummer and the bass player. Like we have to hold this thing together no matter what. And I finally found myself in this world where I really like the super simple, driving, aggressive bass style mixed with fills here and there. But I just found like that's what I like to play like. You know, I have like really interesting bass lines like in, you know, Primal Scream and Going Mad, a really big walking thing. And little things here and there, even like on Too Fast for Love. But in general, I started finding my way as a bass player as a supporting role to the song, which in a lot of the cases, I was the songwriter. So I'm writing a song, quote unquote, something that you can like, it keeps your imagination lyrically, musically. And then, oh, now I'm the bass player. Well, let me just write the bass part on top of everything. And I'm like, it just doesn't work for the music that the Slades, the Sweets, some of the Bowie stuff. But in general, I started finding myself liking Pistols, Ramones, Sabbath. You know, it's rooty, it's aggressive, and it's dirty, and it's simple. And sometimes at 6 a.m., my bass playing is completely different, though. So there you go. You just got to do what's right for the band.
You do. And 6 a.m., and it's great that you got this new collection out, which is, you know, I just think it's fantastic that's coming, you know. I love this book is so fascinating to me just because of your, you know, I'm sure like so many other rock fans that are watching you and I right now, just that journey that you took, your love and just devoting your love and then creating and you know, and becoming a part of a band that has inspired so many others. And that's the cool thing. It's just like the way that it works with rock and roll and music is just what you did, the people that inspired you and the people that you inspire. But also, I got to say, Nikki, like I said, it's I love like what you do also for recovery and sobriety because, like I said, now, you know, I'm sober 17 months, you know, and I'm really, I'm devoted in a big way. And you've just been there for a lot of other people too. And you know, you've spread a positive message of change, you know, that you can change your life, you can get that clarity. And it's a beauty. And I think your honesty about your story, even in this book, which is the pre-Crüe days, is just so great because it just so people can get so much from it, you know?
I learned from a lot of the writers that I like Bukowski and even Kerouac, but Burroughs, they didn't have any fear. And then like Jimmy Dean with Big Bad John didn't feel like there was any fear. I'm telling a story. Big Bad Leroy Brown by Jim Croce. I'm telling a story, and I'm going to be honest about the junkyard dog. I'm going to be honest about the junk. I'm going to be honest about my life. And so I go into all my affairs like that, like just be transparent. And if you don't like me, that's okay. If you don't like what I have to say, but I don't want to be on the planet and then like check out whenever that happens. And they'll be like, yeah, I got guy who's kind of like, you know, never really let us in. And I know people like that just won't let you in. And I just don't want to be that kind of art. And it's not only about an artist. I want to live my life like that. I'm like that with my kids. I'm like that with my friends. Just, you know, met this really cool couple out here through other mutual friends. And I met this guy and I immediately connected because the guy was kind of like me or like you, Matt, just open about his life. And he had been through stuff. If you've been around for a second, we're going to go through shit.
Yeah.
And who we are is how we deal with the shit.
Yeah.
How we deal with it. And then how do we learn from it and pass it on to the next guy? So I enjoy being like this. I appreciate that you notice that. It means, means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Now, I know you don't have a lot of time, but I do want to talk to you about coming to LA before we go. And, meeting Eddie Nash, the Starwood, and the first meeting with Mick Mars. Because, those are really important moments that are also in the book. So let's talk about that.
Matt, a lot of books that I've read from different worlds, whether you're a CEO of a company or a musician or an actor, a lot of them are, there's a lot of chest beating, a lot of like how great I am, a lot of look what I did. And I have to say that I think there's a big part of how we get to wherever we are each individually as human beings to go to. You can control part of that destiny by working harder than anybody else, or focusing or spending more time learning about that said thing, that business, that instrument, that whatever it is. But there comes elements of luck, and people count out luck. For me, luck was my uncle telling me I could come to Los Angeles, where it was like a petri dish of insanity for my imagination. Yeah. It was amazing. As I was going on this journey and putting bands together and auditioning for bands and working 2 jobs a day, sometimes even 3, sleeping 2 or 3 hours, working at this I worked in a factory from 5 o'clock in the morning till I think it was a 12-hour shift. And I didn't think you could legally do that now, but I was just happy to make the money. It's a 12-hour shift. I would get back from the deep in the valley to where I lived in a garage in Burbank, and I would try to put myself together, get some food if I could, if I had enough money, and then I would walk to the liquor store, Burbank Liquor, down the street, and I would work and close at 2 a.m. and then I had to be at work again at 5. In the meantime, I am studying and I'm listening, and I'm, on weekends I'm out and trying to go to clubs, and I'm working at this liquor store, and this cool looking dude comes through the door, and I'm like, all right, finally somebody around here we're on the same page. Guy's got long black hair and looked ghoulish and cool. And obviously he looked at me and goes, well, this is like, this guy's obviously not a banker. He looks more like whatever he looks like. So, we started talking and stuff, and, we've talked about my love and a lot of the similarities for you, our love of bands. And Mick asked me, what stuff I was into, and I told him, and then he was telling me he's like into Paul Butterfield, which I didn't even know who Paul Butterfield was at that point, and he was into Jeff Beck, which, I love Jeff Beck, and Jeff Beck put out 2 of my favorite records, Blow by Blow, was the other one with Freeway Jam on it. But
Wired? Was it Wired you were thinking of?
Wired, yeah, Wired and Blow by Blow.
And I'm sure you liked the Beck, Bogart, and the Peace album with Carmine and Tim. That was great too, right?
Yeah. That's where Mick was coming from.
Yeah.
Mick was coming from the blues, from the rootsy guitar playing, and we were just on a different page.
Yeah.
He says, kid, you a real guitar player play. I love how cocky he was. I mean, look at that. He's right in my face. You want to see a real guitar player play? Come down the street. I'm playing at the Stone Pony or whatever it was called. And I don't know how I got in. It was the 70s. It was the 70s. You could get in places underage and drink and do all kinds of stuff.
I remember it well. You could get in at 15, 16. Nobody was really carding you.
Go up to the bar and order a drink if you could afford it,
Yeah.
So I went in. I had stolen a bottle of, I think, Bacardi and stuck it in my boot and walked in the club. And so I put my bottle out, and Mick comes over, and we have some drinks. And I think we're both pretty hammered from what I remember. And then he went up on stage and he started playing, and I was like, man, this is like everything like I could ever imagine like wanting to be in a band with this. Look at what he's doing. And he had this mic stand and he was doing this slide on it. Just wah, wah, and all this like crazy stuff. And I've never even seen anything like that. And, you know, we had each other's numbers, we lost contact. And then when we did reconnect, when Mötley, this for me and Tommy first, and then looking for band members, and we answered an ad in the Recycler. It just said loud, rude, aggressive guitar player, and Mick showed up looking the same as he did the day I met him, just all raggy clothes and crazy black hair, and he had a guy with him that like his tech. Like I didn't even know like what a tech was. I was my own tech. You know, we set up our own gear back then, and they had strapped to the top of this like small car Marshall cabinet, and inside was a Marshall head. And Mick comes up, and this guy comes in. They set up this Marshall half stack. Tommy's got all his drums, and I got one SVT cabinet and a head. And we're dilapidated. I mean, should have been knocked down house in North Hollywood. And I was like, here, check this out. And then he just grabbed a hold of it, man. Like, my favorite guitar player ever since.
That's incredible. What a great story. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but that's luck. That's luck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Meeting the right people and having the right combination is right. It really is. You know.
It's luck. So we can't take luck out. And even in sobriety, you know, you put the work in. You go to your meetings. You do your follow-up stuff. You do your work. And one day you meet this guy. He says one thing to you. It just happened to be lucky that he was at the same place as you, and it changes your perspective, and you're able to stay in sobriety. Yeah. I'm into this, you know, this thing where it's like I'm going through life and I'm doing my best, and the best I could do for anybody that I'm with, and my kids, my wife, and my bandmates, and then I'm just kind of waiting, and fucking cool shit shows up. It just shows up, man. And if you're ready, but you got to be ready for it. If you're not ready, your eyes are closed. If you're checked out, if you're lazy, you can't manifest that luck.
You're right. You know, people always say that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You know what I mean? And that's absolutely true. Right. You know? Nikki, I got to tell you how great this was. I could talk to you forever. I know they got to do another shoot, but I want to just tell you how much I loved and enjoyed this with you because, you know.
Thank you, man.
You know, it's just.
Well, we should do it again.
Yeah, we should definitely do it again. You know,
I'm wearing, you know, I'm this new Zoom world. You don't know what I'm wearing under here.
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah.
You know, I can kind of see what you're wearing. You don't know what's going on under here. So we can get real kinky next time.
Yes, we'll have to do that. Absolutely. But, you know what I mean? I'm telling you, Nikki, it's great. What a great book. And just, I'm really excited about it. Thanks for sharing that part of your life and that story. Nikki, thanks again, man. This is fantastic. Love catching up with you, man. Absolutely.
Be good. You're looking good. Congratulations on your sobriety. Keep it up. If you ever have a problem, you know who to call on that shit.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Nikki. I appreciate it, my brother. Great to see
buddy.
you. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
You got it. Nikki Sixx, everybody. So great to have him. The new book is called The First 21. This is KLOS New and Approved. I'm Matt Pinfield. Thanks so much for watching.